Welcome back. My favorite part of the show, money, power, politics. The FCC is set to vote tomorrow to repeal something a lot of us take for granted or don't know what it means: net neutrality. How does it affect you? NBC's Tom Costello breaks it down. Pay attention.
The best way to understand net neutrality is to think of the internet as a sort of congested superhighway, with most of the fast lanes taken up by big fat trucks carrying content, like Amazon, Netflix, and Hulu. In 2015, the Obama administration ruled those big companies cannot pay to dominate the fast lanes. High-speed internet, it said, is a public utility and everyone should have equal access. But President Trump's FCC and the nation's internet service providers, or ISPs, including NBC parent company Comcast, AT&T, Verizon, Cox, and others, argued net neutrality rules limit their ability to innovate and invest in new products.
One of the things we don't want to put on the table is the FCC micromanaging the business practices of private companies.
Now, consumer advocates warn that getting rid of net neutrality regulations will only hurt consumers. By allowing ISPs to throttle internet speeds for some websites, even allowing them to block customer access to competitors' websites. For example, allowing maximum speeds for a video streaming service like Netflix, but potentially slowing speeds for your child's online music lesson or your college lectures.
Without these regulations, one website could make sure that that their content is reaching consumers faster than others, which again ultimately would result in less choice for the consumer.
But the nation's ISPs, including NBC News owner Comcast, insist they do not and will not block, throttle, or interfere with internet traffic. Tom Costello, NBC News, Washington.
I want to bring in one of my faves, Jeff Jarvis, Associate Professor and Director of Interactive Program at CUNY School of Journalism. Jeff, I want to play for you what the FCC chairman said this week when asked specifically if a handful of companies are going to be able to control content on the internet. Listen.
No, I think what net neutrality repeal would actually mean is that we once again have a free and open internet. The government will not be regulating how internet service providers, how anyone else in the internet economy manages their networks.
Do you think the repeal is going to mean that?
No, and there's no ideological consistency even with these folks. On the one hand, Ajit Pai is saying, let's tear down net neutrality and let the phone companies and cable companies control the internet and do whatever the heck they want. Then he went to Tucker Carlson only 24 hours ago and said, well, Facebook and Google shouldn't be able to control conservative content. So he wants to control them and restrict them because they're liberal companies. And he wants to enable the oligopoly of cable and telephone to control the net.
Well, the FCC announced this week that the FTC is going to police internet service providers. How's that going to work?
Yeah, sure. The problem is...
Technically speaking, yeah, sure.
The bigger problem here is that, the internet is architected like the American First Amendment. It is about freedom of speech and freedom of action. Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the World Wide Web, said on a tweet yesterday... No. The web he invented. He said that net neutrality allowed me to invent the web. That without the web, without net neutrality, without that protection, he would have to ask permission. Eric Schmidt, the executive chairman of Google, has said that Google and Facebook would not have started if Larry Page, Sergey Brin, and Mark Zuckerberg had to ask permission of Viacom and Comcast and other companies to do this. The web and the net is a permissionless sphere. That's good and bad, but it's generally good, where anyone can talk to anything.
But the beauty of it has lowered barriers of entry, which has made it a playground for extraordinary entrepreneurship. What will this do to the startups of the future?
That's the worst fear that I have, Stephanie, is that if you're a little startup, and I teach entrepreneurial journalism at CUNY.
Sergey, Larry, and Mark Zuckerberg would not have been able to start the extraordinary companies they have today had this been in place.
Which makes America a leader, and America a leader still in the internet. So the entrepreneurs that I teach at my school, they're not going to have any hope of being able to afford to pay the fees needed to Comcast, to Verizon, to AT&T, to these companies if they demand that. At the same time, you have companies like Netflix that can afford to pay and will pay probably to get to us. And then there's another issue that the telcos will make it look good for us. They'll favor some content. They'll make some content free. You see this happening now with plans. Oh, that video is free for you. That sounds great, but it means that the company they favor has a huge advantage over some newcomer, some kid I see at VidCon coming in through YouTube.
Then is this all about special interest groups? Because 83% of Americans do not approve of this proposal. Now, their hair was on fire because last week, joking at a dinner, the FCC chair who came from Verizon said, oh, I'm a brainwashed Verizon puppet. But listen, he did say that at dinner. We all say lots of silly things at dinner. But why would this plan, if 83% of the public is saying, I don't think so, if you're seeing guys like Eric Schmidt saying this is going to stifle entrepreneurship, who's behind this?
This is the key point, I think. That University of Maryland poll shows that even, I think it's 79% of Republicans are against getting rid of net neutrality. So
then
politically, in a
wants
democracy, it's not a democracy anymore. And this is the demonstration
then
of what's happening.
Answer the question, who wants it?
Who
this
wants
is like
it?
no one will tell me who's the specific person who doesn't want to fund chip. Who is the person? Who's the organization that wants to do this?
Cable companies and telephone companies. Because they do invest heavily in this. I give them that. And this gives them the freedom. Now, some will say, well, they won't go overboard right away. But it takes away the freedom. It takes away the fundamental architecture of the Internet.
And let's just be clear about something. Nobody goes overboard right away.
Right.
But without guardrails, everyone goes off the edge at some point.
I'm a frog and it's getting
nature.
hot in here. Yeah.
There you go. Jeff, it's always great to see you.